that would be fun. I've known Teelyn, I don't know, when did you come into CR? Like 6 years ago, yeah, at Open Door Church in Hibbing. And I remember Teelyn coming in, and I remember thinking, she's a little brat. It's like, we'd have these meals just like we do here, and we'd just provide everything. And I remember one day I didn't have enough time. I don't know, it was hard to get like a dessert. I'm like, I'm just not even doing dessert. Plenty of food. Teelyn comes in, she's like, what's for dessert? I'm like, there isn't any. She's like, what are we supposed to eat? I'm like, you could have brought some dessert. But that was her early years, okay? It gets better. I'm not going to pick on her the whole time. Now I see her going on missions trips. Really awesome pictures on Facebook. Just powerful stuff. I see she built a nice relationship with Shar, too. I thought that was neat. And I see her. Oh, we were at Legacy Church on Sunday. She's giving, we had a panel of Celebrate Recovery attenders just sharing their testimony about CR and how it helped them and trying to promote it to this church. And I just watched it today on my phone because when I was there, I was kind of just like, ugh. So I wanted to see how I did, and I wanted to see how everybody did. And I thought, you did an amazing job. I'm like, that's not the old Teelyn. She's grown so much. And so with that, I'm not going to yak too much because Teelyn's probably going to yak a bunch. Yeah. All right, you just wanted to hold this, right?
I normally get a really sore throat when I talk too much. Imagine that. Imagine that. Can't talk too much. Anyways, my name's Teelyn. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Like Dan, I also rewatched that thing at Legacy, and I was like, wow, like my voice actually doesn't even sound bad anymore. Like, you know, when you hear yourself talk and you're like, you know, disgusted. Like, I was actually not disgusted when I heard myself, and I was like, wow, I actually know what I sound like. I know what I'm talking about. So I'm getting better with talking in front of people. So like Dan said, I came to Celebrate Recovery about 6 years ago. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol. Since coming to CR, I realized I struggled with like food and sex and smoking and abandonment. And like the list is on, and like now it's distraction and still smoking. So anyways, I'm just gonna go kind of through what my life was like and how Jesus transformed my life. So growing up, I lived in a house with my mom and my dad, and my dad wasn't a believer, and he didn't really talk about God at all. He was kind of like, anytime the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door, he'd have like a big stink, and he'd be like swearing about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm like, okay. So we didn't talk about Jesus or anything, but my grandma was, I feel like this is really loud. Anyways, my grandma went to church at this little church in Hibbing. It was like really small, and she would bring me there like on Sundays, and I'd go to Sunday school, and then I started going to like VBS in the summertime, and so I learned all about like the Bible stories, and I kind of knew about Jesus. Like I knew that like Jonah swallowed him, you know, all these things, but I didn't know what it was like to like have a relationship with Jesus. And then when I was about 11 years old, I started hanging out with a group of friends. I was in 4th grade, I remember. And my friends Sarah and Heaven, and they were like my best friends, and we started smoking pot at like 11 years old. And we thought we were so cool. We like hung out with these old people. They were like 18 and we were like 11. Like they have no business hanging out with us, but we thought we were so cool. So we'd go to parties at their house, and their parents would be there and like letting 11-year-olds there smoking weed. I don't know. I just thought that was normal behavior because that's what I seen these parents doing. But I felt kind of icky because I'd have to like lie to my parents. I'd have to say like, oh, I'm going to a dance. I need money for a dance, you know. And they'd give me money, and then I'd go and smoke weed, and then I'd like come back, and so kind of the conviction was like hitting my heart. And I told my friends, I'm like, I don't think I want to smoke weed anymore. I feel bad, you know. And they were like really mean to me after that. They like rejected me. They like started telling gossip about me, like started like we're going to tell your parents you smoke weed. Like, they were just really mean. And I was like, okay. So, like, at an early age, like, I learned that to, like, people please, you know, and to do what people thought was cool so I could be accepted, because I lost my friends over that. And then I remember I met some new friends, because I'm very friendly, you guys know that. I just can meet friends anywhere. So I met some new friends at school, and then we had like DARE class, and in DARE, they asked, like, what's the biggest drug on the range? And I'm like, marijuana? And they're like, no, methamphetamine. Here's what it looks like. Don't try it. You'll be addicted. And they showed, like, they had like a little skit about what it was like to be on meth. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try that. They can't tell me that I am going to get addicted the first time, you know? So I told my friends, my goody friends, I'm like, I think I'm going to try meth. And they're like, we won't be your friend, you know? And I was like, wow. I'm like, I didn't even think that, like, that was not something you say to your friends. Like, I thought that was like normal. So I didn't try it obviously at that age, but so then I kind of started going to youth group about 7th grade, and I loved youth group at my church. And there was a really good, actually I went to Abundant Life Church, this youth group, with my friends from school, and I loved it. The pastor was really awesome, and I was like starting to feel the love of Jesus, and they were doing Speed the Light, and I'm like, I'm gonna give to Speed the Light, like, this is amazing. They had like this coffee house, and it was like a hangout area, and it was really cool. And then the pastor said he was gonna leave and take another job or something. And then I was like super sad about it, and I'm like, okay, like now someone else is leaving, so I quit going to youth group. And then when I was about 13, so when my dad was 50 when I was born, so he was like kind of an old guy, and I was kind of ashamed about his age. But when I was in about 8th grade, I was like 13 anyways. I was 13 years old, and I was hanging out with my friends. I was gonna go to their house after school, and my mom calls me. My mom let me do whatever I wanted. Like, I go to my friends, she knew where I was going. She never like told me to come home like after school if she knew I had plans. So she called me and she's like, oh, I think you should come home. And I'm like, did my dad die? And like, that's like exactly what I said. And she was like, yeah, and I think you should come home. And I was like, nope, actually I'm gonna go hang out with my friend. I watched like a Joel Osteen video, and he said like, just be happy or something. So I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do to like find joy. I'm not gonna be like depressed about my dad dying, and I'm just gonna live my life and not let this stuff swallow me. So I like numbed my pain on my own. And I don't want to go home and like cry with my mom, because me and my mom didn't share our feelings. We didn't talk about things like that. Like, she was a great mom, don't get me wrong. Like, she did a lot for me, but I didn't want to talk about my feelings. And so that night I came home, and my mom was already sleeping, and then I was like texting this guy, and I was like, oh, like, so I went over to his house, like, to have sex with him. And instantly, like, I felt better about my dad dying. So I was like, okay, this is it, you know? But afterwards, I felt like a little bit used, but the overall feeling of, like, release from my feelings. So I started just, like, sleeping around with people, and then I started smoking weed again and started skipping school and drinking. And I kind of blame my mom for my dad dying because, okay, previously before he died, sorry, I'm like jumping around, but previously before he died, he got sick. Well, my mom put her restraining order on him because she was going to leave him. And he was like, I'm going to kill the animals. So my mom was like afraid for my life, so she put a restraining order on him, and he was out of the home. So I thought he started drinking again because he had a really bad alcohol problem. And then he was sick, and he was in the hospital, so I kind of knew that he was going to die, so it wasn't like a big shock when he died. But then I blame my mom, right? Because I blame my mom for like kicking my dad out of the house. Like, how dare you? You didn't even see him in the hospital. Like I blamed everything on her, and I started just acting up like hardcore, being defiant and just really mean to her. She would ask me questions about what I'm doing, and I would just like snap because like I was using drugs and drinking and skipping school, and she was wondering why I was skipping school. And so I was really mean, and I like skipped a whole entire year of 7th grade, and I was gonna get, or maybe it was 8th grade, and I was gonna get held back. So I asked my mom, like, maybe I should go to Chisholm school because I have friends in Chisholm, and maybe it'll be better for me. And she said, yeah, I think that we can make that happen. And so I started living at my friend Erica's house kind of like most of the time. I would go home like once a week, maybe once every 3 weeks. So I like would walk to my school from my friend's house. And during this time we would like drink and like take pills and all of that stuff. And then I got my first boyfriend, and his name was Cody, and he was previously a meth addict before, but he was like in recovery, and we would drink, but the relationship was super toxic because I didn't know what a relationship was supposed to be like, because I just like slept around all the time, so I didn't know what like love was, right? Because I thought like sex was love, and he like cheated on me, and we had like a terrible relationship, and he ended up, and I would take Adderall now to go to school because still school was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to drink and party all the time. So I would take Adderall so I could like concentrate at school. And then I would take Adderall a lot. And then Cody, he was like gonna move. We broke up or whatever, and he started doing meth before he left. And actually before that, I was hanging out with his mom. He was like dirt biking, and his mom was like smoking meth and asked if I wanted to smoke, and I was like, I did want to smoke, but I didn't know how to smoke it because it's like complicated, and I didn't want to look like an idiot. So I was like, no, I won't smoke it, you know? And so again, here I think this is normal behavior for parents to just be doing this with their kids. And so I didn't smoke at that time, and I kind of told Cody, like, I'd like to start smoking meth. And he's like, absolutely not. Like, you'll get addicted to it. And I'm like, why does everyone keep telling me I'm going to get addicted to it? Like, no, I won't. So I ended up moving, and he's like, he was trying to get rid of his meth, and he gave it to my friend, and he said, whatever you do not give it to Teelyn. Well, what does she do? She calls me right away and was like, hey, do you want to smoke meth? And I'm like, yep, I do. I'm like, hey, Mom, can you give me a ride to Chisholm? I want to go hang out with my friend. I'm like, you got to hurry. Like, I'm like trying to rush my mom out of the house. I'm like, we got to go. She's like, why are you acting so weird? I'm like, I just want to see my friend. You're taking, like, I was being mean. So then I tried meth for the first time, and it was great. I thought I was so cool again. Like, and I didn't do it for a while after that. And then, so school went downhill, so I decided I was going to try online school, and I did online school for a while, and I ended up trying to buy a car with my cousin, and he was like talking code about meth, so I was like, ooh, you smoke meth? Like, can I do that with you? And he was like, what? Yeah. So then we started smoking heavily together, and I smoked for like 7 months straight because I was going to prove that I didn't get addicted, you know? And finally, it was about 7 months, and I was kind of feeling like maybe I was getting addicted to this. And my mom was kind of questioning, because I'd come home after like 2 weeks, and I'd sleep for like 3 days straight, and she would go to work and come home, and she's like, something's wrong with Teelyn. And her coworkers were like, she could be on meth. And my mom's like, no. My mom's like very gullible, I don't know the word, but she didn't know, right? And she just will believe anything. So then my mom told me, okay, now I dropped out of school. I somehow got my GED. I don't even remember how I got my GED in that time period, but I got my GED, and my mom said, okay, it's time for you to get a job, or you got to like move out. And I'm like, okay. And my cousin kind of just like quit talking to me, so I just quit using meth, and I got a job. I got a job taking care of handicapped people, and I loved it. But apparently I was addicted to meth, so that little voice in my head was like, when are you going to use again? And I'm like, so I started taking vacation from work like once a year, and I'd smoke meth on my vacation. I'd stay up the whole week, and then I'd go back to work because I didn't want to do drugs because I had a responsibility to take care of these people. And then after about 2 years of only doing it like once a year, I decided, oh no, my schedule got switched to like 5 days off every 2 weeks in a row. So I'm like, perfect. I can do meth for those 5 days. And then I can go back to work, not sleeping, thinking this is normal and no one's gonna know. They definitely knew. I eventually got fired, imagine that, because I took a vacation and I ended up getting in trouble by the law for like a disorderly conduct. And this is kind of when I started getting in trouble. So I lost my job, and my mom moved out, let me live in the house. And so now she's living with her boyfriend, and I got this whole house to myself, and I have no responsibilities. So I started doing meth every day. I lost my car. I started hanging out with people who did drugs. Someone cut my gas line in my house to try to steal the copper, and my house literally nearly almost blew up. And I was panicking, like, so I called the police, and I'm like, you guys, there's someone cut my gas line. I'm like panicking because my neighbor's house is like this close. Like there's like a walkway in between. And I thought, if my house blows, it's gonna blow the whole block. And so I called the police, and they came, and they went in my house. Obviously, I didn't like hide anything because this is life or death. Well, they did what they're supposed to do. They're in my house, so they're finding paraphernalia, and then I get charged, and I was mad. I'm like, I literally saved people's life, and you're gonna charge me? So I got charged. I went to jail, and I told my mom that I was like gonna go to jail for like years and years because they were watching my house and all of this. So they knew about me, and I got out like 3 days later because it was my first offense, and that's how the system works. And so I got out, and my mom got rid of this dog that I somehow had a dog. I didn't have no business taking care of a dog, but she got rid of my dog, and I was pissed. I'm like, who do you think you are? You got rid of my dog? Like, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna kill your dogs. So the same thing that my dad said to my mom, I said. And she put a restraining order on me, and I got sent back to jail. So I was in jail for about 10 days, and my aunt, bless her heart, my aunt let me go live with her. And it was really good. We did like Bible studies, and she's the one who told me about this Trish Black who goes to Celebrate Recovery and is a woman of God, and I should check it out. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't get sober right away. I ended up relapsing, and now I don't have anywhere to go. And so I lived with my friend for a while, and we used still like for months. And then, so I was on probation, so I knew that they were gonna have me, they were gonna catch on that I was using. So I went in to see my PO, and I was like, hey, like, I need to do something about this. Like, I'm homeless now. I don't have anything. I have like 2 suitcases full of stuff. And I knew I needed to do something different. So I told my probation officer that I wanted to try this Merit House in Virginia. So I went there. I stayed sober for about 6 months, and then I started using again. Imagine that. I lived across the street from a trap house, and I thought that was going to keep me clean. No, I also didn't have like anything like, all I did was quit using. I didn't fill my life with anything productive or anything that fills me with joy. Like, I pretty much, that verse that says something about taking, when you get the demons out, you have to fill it back up, otherwise they'll come back like 7 times. Like, that's totally true. So I got rid of like using drugs, but I didn't fill it back up. So I ended up relapsing and going to treatment, and I met my friend Clady, and he was like my best friend instantly. We clicked right away, and we stayed sober together for like maybe like 6 months, and then I relapsed and he relapsed, and we started using together. And he used heroin too, so I was kind of like dabbling with heroin, but I never wanted to do too much because people were dying, and I was like, I don't want to die. Like, I had enough want to live to not do a lot of heroin and die. And he so we used like for like 6 months. The police started watching my house again, my apartment. I ended up getting a cat, my cat Simon that I have right now. So I got my cat Simon, and he started like eating drugs, so he was like high, and like I knew it. But anyways, so the police were watching my house again. I'm still on probation. I'm like using fake pee to get, to pass these tests. I tried literally everything to stay sober, to keep using and not get in trouble by the law. And so I even got a job working, like, why can't I think of it? Shar, what's the place that's not Express? The other place? Always There Staffing, thank you. So I got a job at Always There Staffing, and they had me at Herberger's. And I went to work one day, and my friend Clady was at my house, and a bunch of people were at my house before I left for work. And I'm like, okay, like, I'll see you guys after work. And I went to work, and I called Clady when I got off work. He didn't answer, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I called him like a bunch of times. He didn't answer, so I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I ended up catching a ride to like Eveleth, and still nobody could get a hold of Clady, and we're like, what? Where is he? Like, this is not like him. And come to find out, he was dead at his apartment, and someone ended up finding him there, and they called me right away, and I'm like, I literally saw him this morning, like at 6 a.m. So he went home, and I don't know if somebody killed him or if he just overdosed on heroin, but he died at like 8 a.m. And man, that hurt. That was the first time like I actually felt like pain in all my years of using. Like I never really felt this when my dad died. I didn't feel it like, but when he died, it like changed something in my heart, and I was broken, and I was so sad. Like I remember just journaling like just the pain out, because I've never experienced pain like that before. And I couldn't cry because I'm not a crier, and it's like really hard for me to like get tears out. So I would like try to force myself to cry, and it wasn't working. And now the meth wasn't working, and I just couldn't feel any better. So I was like, I'm gonna start doing heroin. Like, who does that after their friend just dies of heroin? Apparently addicts do. So I tried heroin. I started doing it, and I missed his funeral because I slept all day. And like then I was like, oh, like what the heck? So my friend Jessica, she lived across the street at that trap house, and we were all really close, and she quit using as soon as he died. Like he died July 20th, 4 days after my birthday, he died. And she quit using right away, and I was using heroin for like, meth and heroin for like a month, and she was like coming over trying to like preach to me. This whole time I kind of knew who Jesus was. Like in my active addiction, I would be praying, and I'd be reading my Bible and highlighting and like studying, and I found like other addicts who loved Jesus, and we would be high on meth talking about Jesus. So, but Jessica came over, and she was like trying to preach to me, and at this point I was like, I don't want to hear any of it. Like I don't care. Like I'm trying to get high. I'm trying to feel better. And I remember I was like coming down one day, and I went outside, and it's raining, and I'm like literally withdrawing, like going through so much turmoil, and I was like walking, and it's night, and it's raining, and I go by the lake, and there's these ducks quacking, and I'm like, these ducks are happy, and I'm not even happy. Like I just want to die. Like, and then it hit me, like, you want to die? Like, and so like I remember that moment vividly, like the feeling of not wanting to live anymore because the pain was so great. And then my friend Jessica was really worried about me because I was using heroin and meth, and so she called my probation officer on me, and she's like, she didn't tell me that she called, but she like pretended like she didn't call, and she's like, she told them exactly where my drugs were. And I remember when they came into my house, they like went straight to my stove, and I had it like hidden in the stove, and I'm like I was a little suspicious how they knew where it was, but I just told them where it was, and I ended up going to jail. And my probation officer gave me like chance after chance, and he's like, you're going to prison. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He wanted me to tell, I was like, I'm not going to prison. So I go to jail, and I'm there for about a month, and I still wanted to get high. I'm like hanging out with like my friends who were also in jail with me, and it was like fun. Like I didn't mind it. I was like walking, getting exercise. And then when the jails get overcrowded, they like ship you out to other jails. And I remember I just kind of had this feeling. I was reading a devotional one day, and I just kind of had like a sense like I knew I was going to get shipped out soon, because when you're there for so long, you kind of have a feeling. And sure enough, that morning, they're like, you're going to go to Washington County. And I'm like, okay. And this is totally unlike me. Normally, I'm like, have anxiety of going places where I don't know anybody and all this. And I just felt like peace. And I'm in this van, and there's no windows, and I drive like 4 hours to Washington County Jail. And I remember I got there, and I like just made myself at home, and all these girls are like, why are you so content? And I'm like, I don't know, this is like, what else is there to do? Like, I'm not gonna be mad about it. Like, I'm just gonna accept where I am. And then I ended up going to a Bible study that same day, or it was the next day I went to the Bible study, and it was on the same exact devotional that I read the day before. And I was like, well, this is weird. This is totally a God moment. And so I ended up meeting friends there and talking about Jesus, and we were walking laps, because that's all there is to really do is walk laps in color. So I was walking laps, and they didn't even know what walking laps was, so I had to teach them about it, because like in the cities, apparently they don't do that at their jail. But so anyways, I was walking laps, and I'm like just telling this girl like kind of my hopes and my dreams. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to have a family, and like a husband and like have a good job. And like in the middle of me speaking, like I heard this voice and it was like, you can. And I'm like, I can? I'm like, oh. And I'm like thinking, I'm like, I can what? I'm like, all this, like I just stopped talking and I'm like thinking all this in my head. And I'm like, and then I was like, oh, like if I literally quit using and like live for Jesus, like I can have all that. So I'm like, I tell this girl, I'm like, I think I'm gonna stay sober. And she's like, good for you. I'm like, no, for real. And then I didn't really tell her what happened, because that's weird. Like I'm hearing voices. Like I didn't want to tell her that. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be sober. And I think in that moment, like I surrendered like my addiction and everything over, like without really saying it, but like in my heart, that's what I did. And in the jail, there's like a window. It's like right where this TV is. It's about the size of the TV, and you can't really see anything, but you can just see the sky. And it was about like 7 p.m. and I'm doing the laps. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of September, there's like a firework display, like actual fireworks. And we're like, do you guys see that? There's like fireworks. And it was really weird. You could see the whole display like for 20 minutes and it was like perfectly positioned in the window. And I'm like, you guys, that's God. Like, you guys, that's God. And I'm like telling her, like, so I knew that was confirmation, like that if I like follow Jesus, like I can have everything that I wanted. And I didn't know like really what I truly wanted. But I knew like I was going to get out of jail soon. And I knew that my cat was at my friend Jessica. She was taking care of it. And I knew that I needed to like have my stuff get put somewhere. So I just wrote my mom a letter because it was about 2 years after the restraining order. So I just wrote her a letter and it was like the most unselfish thing I've ever done. I wrote a letter and I was like, hey mom, like I'm like really sorry. Like I apologize for everything that I did. I took accountability for my actions. And I was like, I'm just asking if you can please take my cat and my stuff. And like, I will find somewhere else to go. I just really want my cat to be cared for. And I didn't hear back, and I go to court. They ship me back to St. Louis County to go to court, and my mom was there, and they released me, and my mom like picked me up from jail, and I'm like, wow, God, like I didn't even have to ask you. Like you knew the desires of my heart. Like you knew I needed a relationship with my mom, and you provided that for me. And so my mom let me move in with her, and my life was like changed. I started, I went to outpatient treatment, and I started going to meetings really heavily and started therapy, started coming to Celebrate Recovery. And like slowly my life started getting better. It wasn't like, all of a sudden I'm living for Jesus 100%. Like I still was like living in the world because I didn't know any better, but I knew that like I had to remain sober and like things would work out. Actually, I really didn't know that he was going to convict me of other things, but I knew that staying sober was the first step, So I started staying sober, and I started doing all the meetings, and I started chairing meetings, and I started going to a step study at Celebrate Recovery. I started going to church at Open Door for a long time. I started helping out with the kids in the nursery school, and then I started realizing like what it means to really live for Christ. Like I remember I was like posted this thing on my Facebook about like a magic mic thing to go to, and then I remember the lady who runs the nursery, like, or the, what is it called? The children's church, whatever. But she pulled me aside and she's like, hey, I seen something on your Facebook is a little concerning. And I'm like, what? And she's like, this magic mic thing. And I was like, oh, like, she's like, you can't be having that stuff on your Facebook. Like, people from church, like, kids as parents, like, so I was like, oh, I didn't realize, like, the impact, what I posted and what I did in my life, like, how it was impacting others. So that was kind of the first step. And then when I was in treatment, I was going to therapy, and I was telling my therapist, I'm like, I'm just going to work 2 jobs, because that was my dream, from like, I just wanted to work and have a good job. And he's like, no, you can't just work a regular job. Like, you're going to get bored. Like, you have ADHD. You need to keep challenging yourself. And that was the first time ever in my life I was like, wow, he's actually right. He's like, maybe you should go to college. And I'm like, I don't want that debt, right? Like, that debt is scary. Like, I didn't want, like, telemarketers calling me because I have this debt that's surmounting. So I was like, I don't want to go to school for that. Well, then my treatment counselor was like, I think you should go to school. And I'm like, what would I even go to school for? And she's like, social work. Like she said social work. I'm like, I don't want to take people's kids away, like, because I lived that life where people's kids actually got taken away, and I thought that the system was out to get them. And so I did a little research, and I realized like a lot of things you can do with social work. And I actually took what people said and like thought about it and like made decisions rationally. And so my treatment counselor signed me up for school because I have a hard time adulting. So she signed me up for school, and I started attending school, and it like literally school transformed my life. It gave me purpose like every day to stay sober and like had something to do. And I didn't work for a while. My mom just let me, get my life figured out, which was a huge blessing to have that time to really like figure out who I am and to change and to grow. And I got really involved in NA, and I started planning like events, and I think I switched churches, and I started going to Abundant Life because I knew that I needed to change, and I knew that I needed people to help me, right? Because I don't know how to walk a Christian life, because I've never seen people walk a Christian life in my whole life. So I knew that I needed friends to like help me and say, hey, like it's probably not a good idea if you don't do that. Like you should do it this way, And Open Door really didn't have like community groups, so I started going to Abundant Life, and I like met some really good people, and they would like text me out throughout the week, and I'd go to like CR retreats, and I started to like really see my life change. And then I remember I took a spiritual gifts test at my church at Abundant Life, and it said like leadership, and I was like, no, I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader at all. Like that is not me. And sure enough, you guys, I'm a leader. Like I thought I was just bossy. Apparently it's like leadership skills. Like seriously, apparently it is. So I started planning events for NA, and they were actually like successful. I'm not trying to be boastful, but I'm just trying to say like they actually turned out really good, and I was like super shocked. I was like, wow, I actually really like planning events. And so then am I like running over on time? Okay, sorry, I don't know how long I have. And then my pastor at church asked me like, hey, do you want to like plan events for us? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I was like scared, but I'm like, absolutely, like I'll do that. And at this time I was working at Sunrise Bakery, and you guys, this is another God moment. I was working at Sunrise Bakery, and guess who the owner of the bakery is? My attorney from when I got arrested. And I was like, okay, I didn't even have an interview at the job. Like they just hired me on because I knew someone at church, and like just let me have a job there. And I was like, this is awesome. So then I started working, finishing up school, and then I got pregnant, and I'm like, my life is ending. I can't be pregnant and do school. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do. And like God really worked it out, and I finished school, and I got a really good job where I'm working now, and I work at the Career Force Center, and I love it, and I get to work with addicts at drug court and mental health court. I get to be like a part of the team, and I'm like, wow, like just looking at how God transformed my life. Like I'm a professional, and I get to help others, and then I get to go on then I went on a missions trip, and I went to Albania the first time last year, and it changed my life. I had all these goals, like once I got sober, like I want to finish school, get a job, get a house, like by the time that I was 30. And then I got accepted into the Habitat for Humanity program, so now I'm getting a house, and it'll be done before I'm 30. And then I'm like, I don't have any more goals, right? When I was in Albania, I'm like, I don't have any goals. Like, I don't know what to do without having a goal. And then when I was on the missions trip in Albania, this lady said that before that, I went to like a women's conference, and they like prayed over me, and they said that I was like, they gave me like a vision for my life, like a prophecy, and they said that I was going to be like an evangelist, like extra read all about it, and like spreading the news of Jesus. And like that's totally not me, like because I get really scared about sharing Jesus with other people. But I'm like, okay. And then she was like, oh, with your son on your hip. And I'm like, oh, like, because when I had my son, I was like, he's not going to be like a hindrance in my life. So then I went to Albania, and I loved it, and I had this heart for missions, and these people there where they they said they were missionaries and they moved to Africa when their kid was 5. And I'm like, how do I do that? Like, how do I go and bring my kid and be a missionary? And they're like, you got to go to this Bible school. And I was like, oh, okay. So I get back and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to Minsom and I'm going to hopefully be like a missionary. And so God, like, I can just see over my life, like, how God has like transformed me from like a drug addict, obviously, to like how he built up my leadership to now how he's just put new goals and new desires in my heart. And it's totally a good thing. And so my new life verse is Jesus explained, my nourishment comes from doing the will of God who sent me and from finishing his work. And that sums up my life living for Jesus, is like I get so much fulfillment in serving him and like doing his will and just advancing his kingdom. And so that's kind of how I want to live my life, and I want to finish his work that he started. So thank you all for letting me share.